Holy cow. They let the Hurricanes in. I'm Manny Navarro of The Athletic. This is the Wide Right Podcast, joined once again by Carlos Ledo of the MIA All-Day Pod. It is Monday, December 8th, 2025, and your Miami Hurricanes are in the college football playoff. They will be playing at Texas A&M on December 20th, a 7-10 battle in the college football playoff. And I got to tell you, I was shocked that this happened yesterday. Carlos, how are you feeling right now, brother?
How does it look like I'm feeling, Manny? Feeling pretty damn good. I told you not to let the Hurricanes in. I told you, and you did. Now you're going to suffer. Now the consequences are coming. Now we're going to go full-blown 305 on you. And you know what? I wore a Dolphins hat last week on the show. Hurricanes get in the college football playoff. Dolphins win again. They beat the crap out of Pitt. We're going to continue doing this, all right? Until the Hurricanes are knocked out of the college football playoff, I will wear a Dolphins hat on every show from here on out.
Who knew the
And
Dolphins would be
smoking them up.
bringing the Canes good luck?
All right, the Dolphins,
Uh,
hey, they better be bringing somebody luck.
hey, I got to tell you, I tuned in. I watched almost all the games on Saturday from about halftime on of the Big 12 championship. I watched BYU get killed. I watched Alabama get smoked. I saw Duke pull off the upset in the ACC championship game, and I thought to myself, man, all the dominoes are lining up for Miami. And then Heather Dinich goes on ESPN and says, well, now that Alabama lost, they could be the perfect buffer between Miami and Notre Dame to keep Notre Dame in and keep Miami out. And I was super nervous because, of course, she's in Grapevine, Texas. She's the ESPN reporter. She's there close to these people every single day talking to them about their process. And so I thought the Canes are cooked, right? I didn't go to bed sleeping well thinking that the Canes were going to get into the playoff. I thought, oh, the bad news is coming around noon on Sunday. And instead, Alabama stays in at number 9, doesn't move an inch despite getting smoked by Georgia in the SEC championship. And then the moment of truth happens, Carlos. What were you thinking? What was going through your body as that you were waiting for number 10 to appear on the screen?
You know, I was confident the Canes would get in just because of the way things played out Saturday. But of course, you know, the doubt started creeping in as the show started, and I'm like, yeah, they're gonna screw us. Yeah, they're gonna screw us. But then when 10 was available, and I'm saying to myself, all right, so it's basically us and Notre Dame. You know, I felt like Hulk Hogan, right, back in the '80s and the early '90s. He's down. They got him in a sleeper hold, right? They do the one, they do the two. And then when that three starts coming down, brother, and he starts feeling the power of the Hulkamaniacs, and it starts running through his veins, and he comes back, hits him with a clothesline, throws him, hits him with a big foot, drops a big leg on him, and gets the 3 count. That's what ended up happening, baby. We're back. We're back like the 80s. With my Jose Canseco 40-40 glasses here, I'm ready to go. The Canes are ready to go. That's how I'm feeling. It hasn't stopped. It's electrifying.
Did you spend the whole day on the couch just drinking and celebrating? What was the
I couldn't
Sunday
spend
like
the
for
day
you?
on the couch, Manny. I was too hyped up. I was running around the neighborhood banging pots and pans. I was yelling at my neighbors. They don't know what I'm saying. They don't watch college football. But hey, I
Yeah,
was excited.
yeah. I was busy writing a column and getting ready to prepare for the transfer portal and all the movement that's going to take place there. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that and
Well,
the rest of college football. But
Dinich being in Grapevine, Texas, I guess she heard wrong through the grapevine.
she did hear wrong. Apparently, she was just as shocked if you watch the replays. Notre Dame, of course, who was ranked ahead of Miami the whole time. I felt really bad for them. I'm going to be honest, Carlos. I know they're the arch rival, but after watching Alabama perform the way that they did, and then just seeing the SEC get the automatic VIP pass to get into the club because they're the SEC, it really upset me because I'm like, this is not a fair and just process. I get it. Alabama had a great middle of the season in October, but they shouldn't have been let in the playoffs ahead of Notre Dame. Agree or disagree with me?
Yeah, I mean, I thought Notre Dame and Miami both should have been in. I don't think Alabama should have made it. And I think by the committee's own criteria, if they're going to knock out BYU based on how they performed against Texas Tech in the championship game, then they should knock Notre Dame out. I mean, Alabama out as well, right? If not,
Mm-hmm.
then you're using just two different standards. Well, the other thing is, as far as feeling bad for Notre Dame, I don't. And here's why. They're a Catholic university, and part of the Catholic identity is using suffering to grow closer to God and using that for spiritual growth and development. And I think this will help Notre Dame in the long run in their spiritual growth.
Well, I'll tell you what, Notre Dame decided to back out of the postseason altogether after they lost that game to Miami. Decided to just say, forget it. We're not even going to a bowl game. And to be honest with you, Carlos, I was a little surprised. I thought these guys would sort of just accept the fact that they weren't able to win their way in after losing their first two games, and instead they decided, no, that's it, we're out. And I was a little shocked. Were you surprised at all that happened?
Yeah, I mean, to be quite honest, it's a bitch move, right? I mean, yeah, you get knocked out of the playoffs, fine, but you still have a bunch of guys on your team. I'm sure they took a team vote, and that's the reason why they came to that conclusion. I hope it wasn't just the administration and
Right.
the football program that made that decision. I hope they asked the players before they did that, because you have a bunch of guys that should still be able to put on the uniform one last time and represent the university, because that means something to them. Guys that could put on one more game of tape against a good opponent to help their draft stock. And guys putting on the uniform to represent their university as a whole, just wanting to go out there based on pride and wanting to show the committee they made the wrong decision. You would hope that they would come out and say, all right, we didn't get in, now give us a big time SEC opponent, give us Texas, give us Vanderbilt, give us BYU, give us somebody that you felt was on the bubble that could have made the playoff and didn't make it, and let us go out there and smoke them and show you exactly what kind of team we are. But doing this, I mean, to me, this is what we call in the game a hoe move.
One thing that was interesting that came out of yesterday's developments with the CFP was that apparently Notre Dame reached a mutual agreement with the CFP that if next year they are ranked in the top 12. Doesn't matter if somebody's ranked ahead of them, they will get in ahead of whatever team is ranked ahead of them. So, sort of a way to protect themselves. And again, it just shows you sort of the mafia mentality of the CFP that because Notre Dame is not in a conference, but they're Notre Dame, they get special privileges. And Miami, fortunately, wasn't burned by this year. It was could potentially be next year or a year after that, apparently. But right now, Miami was able to sneak in ahead of them.
Yeah, can you imagine next year there's a team that's 11-1 ranked 10th, right? And then Notre Dame
Mhm.
jumps them from 12 to 10 to get in the playoff with two losses. Like, what are we doing, guys? Come on.
Yeah,
What we need to do is extend this thing to 16 teams to stop all this bullshit to begin with. I've got the perfect format, but nobody wants to listen.
yeah, I don't. I was going to be very interesting to see what everybody across college football does next year, in the next few months to sort of jockey and put themselves in the perfect position to adjust to all of these sort of mutual agreements that Notre Dame is making with the CFP, and what kind of new format we may have for next year. They still haven't even decided, by the way. They still have to figure out what the 2026 playoff format is going to look like. They delayed that decision until January, Carlos. So,
Listen, real
um,
simple. Here's the way it should go: 16 teams, right? You do it the way the NCAA tournament does in basketball. Okay, top four, the Power Four conferences, right? Anybody that participates in that conference championship game, so long as they're ranked in the top 16, is guaranteed in. No matter what happens in that conference championship game, champion and runner-up are in automatically. All right, that gives you 8 teams. Take the next highest power group of 5 champion, that gives you 9 teams. Now you got 7 at-large bids. Anybody ranked from all the way down to 18 is in. We have 2 playing games: 15 versus 18, 16 versus 17, and those winners become 15 and 16 as you advance. Bang. There you go. You got 18 teams in the playoff now, right? There should be no excuses for anybody left out. All these 18 teams should be competitive enough to at least get one win in the playoff. Now you make it interesting, and there's nobody crying and going home with the ball saying they're not playing in a bowl game.
Well, if you want to check out some of the interesting responses fans gave me, because I asked them, I said, if you saw this Notre Dame note and you could just sort of surmise it in a GIF or a GIF rather, uh, go ahead and send it to me. And that's what happened. I have, I think, close to 180 responses of just of GIFs of people sort of acting out Notre Dame's message after not making the college football playoff and deciding to take their ball and go home, as you said, Carlos. All right, we're going to break down the Miami Texas A&M matchup here a little bit. We've got some graphics and things to show you, but before we get to that, I wanted to show you the college football playoff field and what it looks like. You've obviously already seen it. If you're a Hurricanes fan, you've already started to sort of look ahead to what sort of lies ahead here for the Hurricanes. But let's get the graphic up here if we can. No, wrong graphic. Let's get to let's
No, I
get to
just I
the other
just love seeing
graphic.
that. Let me continue to see the letter of Notre Dame's despair and woe.
Somewhere in here, Carlos, I have the screenshot of the
This letter right here. You know what this is like, Manny? This is like Notre Dame uh, being put on the naughty list for Christmas, receiving a lump of coal, and then saying, "You know what, Santa? We're not going to participate in Christmas next season.
right. We're just gonna quit, and
We're just going
that's
to
it.
quit. We don't give a shit. We don't want any presents."
Yeah, the rest of the field announced yesterday: Indiana, the 1 seed; Ohio State, the 2; Georgia, the 3; Texas Tech, 4. The 5 seed is Oregon. The 6 seed is Ole Miss. 7 seed Texas A&M. 8 seed Oklahoma. 9th Alabama, as previously mentioned. Miami 10th, and then 11th is Tulane. 12th is James Madison, of course, the Sun Belt Conference champion who snuck in ahead of
The strong Sun
ACC
Belt.
champion Duke. Let me ask you. We can debate this, but I felt all along that it was in Miami's best interest if Duke pulled the upset. I know that Hunter Yurachek, the head of the selection committee, said that Duke not making the field and the ACC not having any representation did not factor into Miami finishing ahead of Notre Dame. Maybe it didn't, but I think it helped.
Maybe I don't think it really helped that much. I think they would have preferred to have Virginia in to not have two G5 teams in. And I think if they made this decision with Miami, I think ultimately they were going to come to this point anyway. That's the way I think, at least the way I hope they would have thought. But in the end, they could not go without an ACC representative. That's what I feel. So they ended up going with Miami. But I think ultimately, if Virginia had one, I think they still would have picked the Hurricanes, just because it would have been better to have them in than two G5 teams.
Well, no, that's not the way it would have worked, Carlos. You would have had 5 conference champions no matter what. And so what happened is Virginia would have taken the 4th conference championship team, and
Right.
then Tulane would have made it as the 5th. And then at that point, they could have kept Notre Dame ahead of Miami and just said, "Well, the ACC's got representation already." And that's why I said I feel like the Hurricanes benefited from the fact that the ACC didn't have a representative. Otherwise, I think they would have gotten screwed. Just my opinion. But
Oh well. Either
what do you?
way, you know what? Woulda, coulda, shoulda. And guess what? We did it.
Yes, Miami
I
got
don't
in.
care. I don't care what the. Then this is the other thing. This is the other thing. They start spinning these narratives, right? That
Mm-hmm.
try to justify their previous decisions on
Yep.
the selection shows, and it becomes convoluted and it becomes contradictory at some point. And
Right.
it just gets to the point where just tell us who's in the field and stop giving me explanations why, because ultimately what you're doing is just making things more confusing for everyone, and even yourselves. You're boxing yourself in a corner, and then you have to sort of get a switchblade, cut yourself out of that box, and then create a new box to box yourself into. And that's what they did with all these shows. They should ultimately, like we said last week, have one selection show, not discuss the rankings leading up to it, and
Right.
just do that, because ultimately that all you're doing is pissing people off, and
Mm-hmm.
then creating these narratives that ultimately you can't live up to, these standards and these protocols that you can't live up to. Because honestly, if there was a reason to leave anyone out of a college football playoff, if you follow their logic from seasons past and leading in, Alabama
Yep.
should be out. Alabama
Mm-hmm.
got their ass kicked in the conference championship game. They have injuries that are significant to their team that would
Yep.
probably impact their first round matchup. That's another reason why they should be out, right? BYU
Mm-hmm.
was then left out because they lost their conference championship. So if they're capable of dropping a spot or dropping out, then why isn't Alabama? So the logic doesn't make sense. Just give me the field,
Absolutely.
shut up, and get out of the way.
Yeah, I really think that, and the problem is that this is all about making money, right? And creating drama and having a TV show that everybody tunes into because ESPN owns the rights. But it's obvious, like if you're Notre Dame and you're looking at the teams that got in, it's the SEC and ACC team who are owned by ESPN, which is run by an ESPN production. So I totally understand the Irish being completely upset about this, and all the things you cited about if Alabama, I mean, if BYU can fall, right? If other teams can fall by losing the conference championship game, but Alabama can, it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It looks like a totally flawed system. Now, that said, let's talk about the Hurricanes, Carlos, because they get Texas A&M in round 1, and if you look at the rest of the field, assuming they can pull off the win at Kyle Field, they're 4.5-point underdogs. I think if I got to look at the latest BetMGM lines, I think they're 4.5-point underdogs. No, 3.5-point underdogs. If they're not able to pull off the upset, or if they are able to pull off the upset, rather, then they get Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. Um, and I don't know. I think December 30th or December 31st. I got to look at the dates again. But they get Ohio State, which would obviously be a huge matchup. They win that game, then you get the winner of essentially Georgia, Ole Miss, Tulane in
Ole
the
Miss,
national
Georgia,
semifinals.
Ole
So
Miss, yeah.
Georgia, Ole Miss, Tulane, right? And so yeah, I mean it's the most difficult path. But in the end, I mean, if Miami is able to navigate this and go on a long run, this might shut the whole argument about the ACC and weak teams and this and that, and the SEC deserves all these berths. In other words, Miami's not just carrying the flag for Miami; they're carrying the flag, I think, for the conference and for everybody else who gets screwed out of making the playoff.
Absolutely, and it would prove even further the shitty leadership at the top of the ACC of the conference for their tiebreaker setup. If this team goes on to win the national championship and they couldn't even participate in their own conference championship because of a convoluted system that they created to decide who wins these tiebreakers, that you have your conference champion at 8-5, the representative of the entire conference, you've crowned them king. They don't get into the playoff, but the team that you left out of the conference championship wins a national championship. Wouldn't that be a little smack in the face?
It sure would. All right, Carlos. So right now, right, it's Monday, December 8th. We've got 12 days before these teams take the field and start playing. These playoff games.
12
First
days of
one will be
Christmas, baby.
first one will be Alabama and Oklahoma on December 19th at night. How do you fill out this bracket? How do you think this thing shakes out right now? Let's go through the first round. Who's winning, Oklahoma or Alabama?
I don't think either of these two teams are very good compared
Mm-hmm.
to the rest of the field. I don't think they're that great. Oklahoma won the first matchup because of turnovers. Alabama coming off this game against Georgia. I don't know how healthy they'll be coming into the game against Oklahoma. They lost some players during that game that are significant. If those players are still out, to me, their linebacker, I think they had a receiver go out that was really good. To me, I think Oklahoma ends up winning this on the road. I know it's going to be difficult, but if Alabama's still
No,
missing those guys,
Oklahoma's at home, by the way.
Oklahoma's. Oh, sorry, my bad. I saw I normally when you see
Yes.
the bottom team, yeah, that's my fault. Then Oklahoma's winning. Alabama's running back was out during that Georgia game, and it made a big difference, not only in terms of running the football, but pass protection.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't keep Ty Simpson up; he was under pressure most of the game, and also those losses on the defensive end, their linebacker, their I think another DB really hurt them on that end. So to me, I think because of the injuries, and I think again now Oklahoma at home, them having the bye week, essentially 2 weeks to prepare for this game, I think Oklahoma wins.
I agree. I think being at home will be an advantage for them in a game that is otherwise close. I know Alabama played really well the first time they met, and lost essentially because of turnovers and mistakes. But I think this is Alabama team is so wounded right now. It's hard to see them getting their act together in 12 days.
Yeah, and in
Uh,
2 weeks to prepare for this game for Oklahoma, Brett Venables is going to come up with a game plan on defense to shut them down.
Oregon and James Madison. I mean, I think this is. Let me look at the spread of what Oregon and James Madison is right now. It's 21 points for Oregon. I mean, Dan Lanning's team's gonna steamroll these guys pretty
Yeah,
easily. I
I
think.
would take the spread. I'd bet Oregon. I think they're going to boat race James Madison right out of there. I don't think James Madison has ever played in an environment like they're going to walk into in Oregon. Autzen Stadium at this
Mm-hmm.
point in the college football playoff. Oregon with a week of rest, brother, get ready.
Yep. All right. The other before we get to Miami, Texas A&M, let's do Ole Miss, Tulane. Ole Miss is a 16.5 point favorite. They don't have Lane Kiffin anymore, obviously. Tulane, won their conference, but lost, I think, the first meeting between these teams like 45-10 or something.
Yeah,
It
it
was
wasn't
it
even
was pretty
close.
lopsided. Yeah. What do
What's
you
the spread
take?
on this one?
16.5.
You see, if it was like 2021, I would take Tulane. I think they'll
Mm-hmm.
perform better than they did the first time. Although Lane is gone, they still have Pete Golding and they have Charlie Weiss Jr. calling the game for the offense.
Well, Tulane's
So
coach is leaving to go to Florida too, so he might be a little distracted.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know if he will be, but I think at this point he's zeroed in to get them in there and play a tough game. I think it'll be tough and close the first quarter and a half, maybe first half, but then Ole Miss runs away with it.
All right, and of course, Miami, Texas A&M. Who are you taking?
Who do you think I'm taking, man? You tell me. What does it look like? Who did it look like? Okay, we're coming in there, baby. We're coming in there like Doug searching for Chappie. We're going in there for revenge, like Doug looking for his dad, and Chappie just got shot down in Iron Eagle, and we're coming in there to carpet bomb everybody. That's what we're coming to do. We're coming in there like Maverick trying to save Iceman at the end of the movie, telling Goose, "Talk to me, Goose," and dropping bombs on everybody. That's what we're doing, man.
All right, I'll take it. I understand your feelings. There was a Texas A&M offensive lineman that apparently was asked about Miami's defensive line and stopping Ruben Bain. Carlos, I don't know if you've seen this. Um, what's it called?
I haven't I
Clip.
haven't read I haven't read the comic strip in the papers for a long time, so I don't know. I haven't read anything.
Well, he basically said, "All right, I don't think he is a threat that we need to worry about. We will be able to handle him."
Mm,
That those were the exact words
mm.
from one of Texas A&M's offensive linemen. Your thoughts, Carlos? If you want to see the clip, guys, it's available on X.
No, what you should do, and I would advise the Texas A&M offensive lineman. Is he a tackle? Because if he's a guard, he's talking shit because he knows he's not going to get much action against Ruben Bain.
I don't know what he is. I don't know
All right.
which player it is. I
If
don't know
he's a
them by
tackle,
face,
if
but
he's a tackle, son, you're gonna have a long afternoon on that Saturday. Let me tell you something, because you don't pissed off the wrong man. You should now watch First Blood with Sylvester
hmm
Stallone.
hmm
You are the sheriff, and Ruben Bain is Sylvester Stallone. He is John Rambo, and he's coming for your ass. That's what I
so
think.
you yeah, we got plenty of time to do another show about Miami, Texas A&M, but I thought that was sort of rich coming here in the early going of
Yeah, I mean, he's
for
only
your
the
first game.
ACC Defensive Player of the Year. He's only, obviously a top 5 draft pick coming up. He's not a problem. Who does this guy think he is? Right? Get out of here.
All right, so to recap, your picks: Oklahoma, Oregon, Ole Miss, and Miami to advance past the first round. All
Correct.
right. If obviously you feel strongly about the Hurricanes, and we don't need to go through the second round yet. We don't need to sit here and do the whole field, but those are your first round thoughts, your first early thoughts.
Yeah,
I
and I can
agree.
give you some thoughts on the other teams as well. I'm not in terms of the next round matchups, but just what I think about the other teams.
Well, I'll say this: I think Miami is going to win their first round game. I do. I think Texas A&M is definitely there for the taking in terms of not having played a very difficult schedule. They avoided a lot of the big SEC powers. They looked bad against South Carolina. They struggled obviously in the second half against Texas.
Give up a shit
This
ton of
is
points against Arkansas.
Yeah, I think this is a very winnable game for Miami in the
Yep.
first round. Okay. Now, are the Hurricanes going to go out and execute and do everything they got to do in Kyle Field and at 11 a.m. in the morning and on Saturday, December 20th? We'll see. The Hurricanes obviously have had their own demons that they've dealt with in the past. But I think this team is going to be prepared and ready and motivated, certainly by idiots who go on social media and video and post thoughts of what they think of Ruben Bain. So I think that'll all help Miami be super motivated for this game. But I think right now, before we sit here and break down the teams inch by inch, I think Miami can go in there and win that game for those reasons. Now, as far as the rest of the field, Carlos, if you're not picking Miami to win the national championship, somehow they lose. Who do you think emerges after you've got had a chance to watch everybody else play? If it's
I
not
think Indiana,
Miami, who's winning?
Indiana and Ohio State are the two best teams in the country. I think they were ranked correctly going into that Big Ten championship game. I think it was a slugfest. You see how good those teams are. To me, it's the defenses on both sides. Indiana's defense is not as sort of popular in terms of the media coverage as Ohio State's defenses, but they're just as good. To me, also the difference is Indiana's run game is what sets them up for everything. Their ability to run the football and give Fernando Mendoza the ability to go play action. He makes the right decisions, makes the right reads. He may not be flashy sometimes in the way he does it, but he's effective and he's efficient and he's smart. And he gets the ball to the right guy. And having that ground game and that defense, essentially what Indiana is the ideal model of what Mario wants to be down here to me. That, strong offensive line, strong defensive line, shutting people down, shutting the run down, getting after the quarterback, and then offensively being able to run the football and then come off play action and throw off of that. To me, that mold of Indiana is exactly what Mario wanted to have down here from the start.
Yeah, I think the difference for Indiana and Ohio State is that Indiana has a better quarterback.
Yep,
Fernando Mendoza's arm is clearly an NFL arm. You saw several of those deep balls that he threw to Charlie Becker in that game
and he's
that were
accurate.
the difference. Yeah, and he's tough, and he got knocked down on the very first play of the game and came right back and got up and led Indiana to that win. Now look, Ohio State is a team to be reckoned with. I think their defense is legitimately elite. But I looked at those two teams and I thought, why did Indiana win this game when Ohio State clearly has some better playmakers at several positions in terms of NFL potential? It's because of the coaching. Kurt Signetti, I mean, is a genius. What he's been able to do in 2 seasons to turn the worst college football program in terms of winning percentage all time, in terms of Power Four schools, into a juggernaut and the number one team in the country. I mean, you can't give that guy enough praise. And
In
it's
2 years.
incredible in 2 years. And it's incredible to me that he wasn't on a bigger stage sooner. I mean, Kurt Signetti's an older guy already. It's not like he's a young cat. And I just think kudos to Indiana for what they did. I think he's a brilliant coach. He's 24-2 in his time there. Former quarterback at West Virginia who's 64 years old, and now all of a sudden he's the hottest name in coaching, and
Listen,
kudos to them for that.
sometimes the timing happens right at the right time, right? You know,
Hmm.
it's not about our desire, our timing. It's about when the right time appears, and we could deal with it. I think maybe if he had gotten the opportunity earlier in his career, he wouldn't be the guy he is today. I think going through those long trials and tribulations as an assistant coach, really preparing the system down in his mind, the way he wanted to run it, coaching for different guys, including Nick Saban, and then getting the opportunity finally later in his life to be a head coach and then making a decision. I think he's planted his flag at Indiana. He made that pretty clear. At this stage in his life, he doesn't want to move again. He wants that to be his final job.
Hmm.
And so he's poured out his entire soul into this job without the thought of maybe bouncing to a bigger program down the road. No, he decided that he wanted to make this the biggest program in the country. And he's done a great job of not only building up and developing the talent he had there, but using the transfer portal wisely and selecting guys that not only fit his team from a talent perspective, but also from a cultural and personal perspective. And I think that's what's made them go. Also, you know, when you have a guy, this shouldn't be understated, like Fernando Mendoza, quarterback, not just because of the talent, but the kind of person that he is. You watch his
Hmm.
interviews, you hear him speak, and his humility and his desire to be the best he could possibly be at the same time, giving credit to his teammates, constantly doing that. And his story with the way he's done things with what he's facing with his mom with MS and all these things, it's inspirational. I think that trickles down into the team. I think that's one of the things that you need as a football team to be great is you need great leadership as well, and great leadership from great people, not just guys that are going to be in your face and make you do stuff, but guys
Yeah,
that are going to be an example that you want to raise your level of play and raise your level of being a person to that standard to match their energy and match who they are. And I think Signetti and Mendoza have done that for Indiana.
yeah, and again, I think look, they are a legitimate threat to win it. I don't know what's going to happen down the stretch here. I think some of these coaching changes, right? People leaving for coordinator positions could affect things. Ohio State lost Brian Hartline to USF. I saw a report last night that he may not even coach in the playoffs with Ohio State because he's moved on to USF and his future responsibilities. Oregon lost their offensive coordinator, who went to be the head coach. Will Stein went to be the head coach at Kentucky. James Madison's coach is on his way to UCLA. It's a very interesting, like, just dynamic that all these teams are going through this sort of transition. And I only bring that up to say Miami's not going through any of that bullshit.
Yep.
Carlos. They
Finally.
are they are going in with an offensive and defensive coordinator locked in. All their assistant coaches are locked in. All of their players are locked in. I just think that's an advantage, and that can make them a real threat to win this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the difficulty is going to be that round two game against Ohio State, obviously because of that defense.
Hmm.
But can they control Ohio State's offense? I think they totally can. I don't see the one problem is going to be Jeremiah Smith, obviously on the outside. I think Bo Jackson's a really good running back, but I think they have enough to slow them down. But can they get enough on offense going to be able to win a round two matchup against Ohio State? I mean, that's to be seen. The other thing is, with Ohio State, although Hartline's gone, he wasn't always the offensive coordinator. They've got guys that have rotated in and out of their offensive coordinator spots. I think Ryan Day himself can call that offense or have somebody else step in and do that. They're good enough where they could just pick up and keep going. It's the system there basically at this point. Just like Georgia, it's the system. If Glenn Schumann were to go off and take a head coaching job somewhere, I think somebody else could step in. Like they had when Dan Lanning left, and maybe even Kirby would call the defense himself. He's very involved in it. So I think we have established programs like that have had the system in place for a long time, it's a lot easier to have a guy jump in and take over the play calling duties because you've already established that system over a long period of time. You know what you're doing every week in and out. It's a little bit more difficult when you're dealing with a team that's a little bit in flux. Like say if Texas Tech has lost their offensive or defensive coordinator, it's different because it's their first year that they're jumping into this playoff. There's a new system, new coach, a bunch of transfer portal guys. Then it sort of shakes the boat a little bit, right? It
Hmm.
rattles them. But to me, I think with Ohio State and Georgia, teams like that are established, it doesn't rock the boat as much.
All right, I wanted us to talk a little bit about this matchup between Miami and Texas A&M, and so I'm going to take the playoff field off the screen here for us to get a little bit more zeroed in on that. Carlos,
And I'm not
what?
taking them off, man. I'm wearing them the whole show. I'm wearing the sunglasses. I'm wearing the hat. Again, if Miami beats Texas A&M in 2 weeks, I'm going to wear them next show also. I'm keeping these on every show from then on out. Because if we
It's all
keep
about the
winning,
mojo. Yeah.
if we keep winning, and I'm just not just mojo on your pork or on your steak or on your chicken. It's the mojo going forward here in the playoffs.
All right. This is the look at Miami's offense against the Texas A&M defense, and this is courtesy of True Media. Obviously, when you stack these two teams up next to each other, you're going to see a lot of green, a lot of good in terms of rankings and where they are. The one thing with Texas A&M, for whatever reason, their interception rate on defense, as good as their secondary is, and by the way, they have
Yeah,
a
very good.
just not a lot of turnovers, and I think that's the big difference in this game. I think Miami is +9 or +8 in turnover margin, and I think Texas A&M is -7. So right off the bat, that's sort of a huge tell. But you look at Miami's running game, been very average this season. We've talked about that repeatedly on the show. 77th in the country. Texas A&M's run defense ranks 38th in terms of yards per game, but they are giving up 4 yards a carry. So it's not like Miami is going to get completely shut down or face some sort of run defense that's impossible and everything is going to fall on Carson Beck. I think this is more a matter of wills going into this game, and I think that's the key. If Miami runs the football and they have a balanced attack, and you don't have to rely on Carson Beck to do everything, they can win this game.
I agree. I think the key here is going to be if Miami can establish the run game and be physical up front on offense and control time of possession, and move their way down the field, not get greedy. If Carson Beck tries to test his secondary in situations where he's got to force a ball, it's not going to go well. This is a very good secondary. They cover very well on the back end. They've got to find different ways to get Malachi Tony the football, like we've been talking about, because they're going to come in and focus their defense on him to try and eliminate him, as he is the one that makes that offense go in the passing game and even in the running game. What they've been doing lately with Wildcat and jet sweeps. I think ultimately Texas A&M is going to come in here to try and stop the run and force Carson Beck to beat them because they feel they have the secondary to be able to shut down Miami's receivers. I think as a coordinator for Miami, I would do my best to try and create mismatches in the run game through formations, motions, and using different things and different backs like Fletcher, Pringle, using Brown, using different guys, and Malachi Tony, of course, in the run game to try and loosen things up. I also think quick screen game, underneath stuff, things that'll move the ball forward, not necessarily throwing the ball down the field, but that will keep the chains moving, keep us advancing, and keep drives alive are the thing to do. And then when the opportunity presents itself, then you take a deep shot. I think running the football is important because Carson Beck's best numbers this season have come from play action. He's 73.8% in terms of completion percentage on the season, with over 2,000 yards passing and 16 touchdowns when he goes play action. And I think that's the way to go. You've got to be able to allow Carson Beck to use that play action as a threat, draw the defense up, and then find the opportunities and the mismatches behind that.
I wanted us to take a look, since we're talking about Texas A&M's defense. I wanted you to get familiar a little bit with their personnel. I just did their roster breakdown. This is their defensive line. They go about 19 deep. Cassius Howell is obviously the star for them, a guy who knows how to get after the quarterback. But this is a very veteran-laden team. But you look at the rotation, Carlos. They basically go, as I look at this, 1, 2, they go about 8 deep. Okay. The rest of they don't rotate like 12 guys on the defensive line. They basically have 8 guys that they feel really, really good about, including a freshman in Marco Jones, an edge rusher. But it's all talented. You look at the 247 composite. I mean, you got 4 and 5 stars in there, but Cassius Howell is the dude for them.
Yeah, and when you've got 8 defensive linemen that can rotate in and out, that means you're going to be fresh, and that means you could keep pressure on the quarterback on a consistent basis. You don't have to worry about, are my guys getting tired? Do I need to start blitzing more because the front four is getting worn out? And these guys can bring the noise all game.
Cassius Howell has 11 and a half sacks, 14 tackles for loss. Dayon Hayes is the other threat with 4.5 sacks. But Howell is the guy who basically controls the tempo for them. I wanted to take a quick look at their defensive line here for a second. Hold on. I'm getting there. It takes a second with all this technology, so I apologize for not being ready on the whim. This is the linebacker unit. Torian York has been there for a while for them. Played a lot of football again, they are not an elite run defense, but they are a good run defense and steady. I think this is a unit that is not going to be easy. Scooby Williams, former Gator, is on there, and then Damian Sanford, the junior, is the other guy who starts and plays a whole lot for them.
Yep. And I think the way you try to eliminate these guys again is by formation. You try to create some formations where you're moving a linebacker out of the box, and then you're running basically against a 4-1 box, or doing different things that put them in a position that confuses or run reads.
All right, their secondary, Carlos, is very, very, very experienced. I mean, I'm going to look at the career stats here in a second, but Des Ricks, Will Lee, Tyreek Chappelle, the nickelback, all three of those corners are solid, solid corners. Marcus Ratcliffe and Dalton Brooks are the safeties. It's a good unit overall.
They're a good unit, and they have one of the best pass defenses in the country. Obviously, one of the best pass defenses in the SEC. Like you said, they didn't come up with a lot of picks during the season, but that doesn't mean that they weren't covering guys down and shutting down offenses on the back end. They're experienced, so they don't fall for a lot of stuff. I think you'll probably see them go a lot more man than previous weeks in Miami's faced. And ultimately, like I said, I think they're going to try and focus on shutting down the run game, creating heavy boxes, and letting these guys play on the back end one-on-one. And then you've got to be able to find those opportunities.
Yep. Rick's 21 career starts, Lee 33 career starts, Chappelle 41 career starts, Ratcliffe 34 career starts, and Brooks 19 career starts. And even what they got on the bench in Bryce Anderson 20 career starts, Shaw 11, and Julian Humphrey 10 career starts. He's a former Georgia guy, so a lot of experience, not a lot of young guys. So it's going to be a challenge. And the way I look at it, Carlos, is Miami needs CJ Daniels and they need some other guys to be able to step up here and not just be the Malachi Tony show.
Yeah, I think you've got to use the tight end in this, right? You've got to be able to, if they are great on the back end, they're locking down your receivers on the outside, and you've got to find a way to get the ball to tight ends and backs in those matchups against either a safety or a backer.
All right, let's go ahead and take a look now at Texas A&M's matchup with Miami's defense. Here are the numbers. 20th in yards per game, 21st in yards per play, obviously very explosive. 28th in yards per rush. That's going to be a great matchup. Miami's run defense, trying to contain Marcel Reed and some of their backs. Net yards per pass attempt, 20 there for 20th for Texas A&M. The only thing is the interceptions with Reed. That's kind of the one area that you look at and you say, well, that's where Texas A&M could struggle. And Miami secondary has done a pretty good job of holding on to the ball and creating those turnovers.
Yeah, it's amazing. Basically, Marcel Reed and Carson Beck have about the same exact stat line. You're talking about 3,000 yards passing effectively, 25 touchdowns, 10 picks. And they both have sort of the same issue with the interceptions coming into this game, that they've cost them games because of their turnovers. I think the thing that the Hurricanes have to watch for here is Marcel Reed being an athletic quarterback. They use him as part of the run game. They play +1, so that stresses defenses. And some of their biggest games have been because of Marcel Reed's legs, not just his arm. So that threat of running really creates things and open things up for them in the down the field in terms of the passing game. The other thing I think is Marcel Reed, when under pressure, isn't the same quarterback as most quarterbacks aren't. But when he's under pressure, he's only completing 39.7% of his passes. But the thing is, most of those are when he's not blitzed. So he struggles more with a front four pressure than with any blitzing, because I think what ends up happening is, like I've said before, when you get blitzed, you identify the hot man, or you identify the best matchup, because generally they're going man to man behind it. Very rarely will you find a zone behind it. And also he's athletic, so he's able to scramble, create, and make things happen against the blitz. Whereas if he's facing a front four pressure, they're keeping him in the pocket, he can't scramble, he can't get out. He's got to make a decision and find somebody behind that. He ends up struggling.
Yeah, I think a big injury here for Texas A&M is Le'Veon Moss. He's been dealing with an ankle injury, I think, since the Florida game back in October, and we'll see where he's at in terms of playing against Miami. I know he's been trying to come back since that performance, but I think he is a super. You talk about what to sort of follow here in the 12 days leading up to this game. I think for Texas A&M, it's, hey, where's Le'Veon Moss, and is he going to be able to be a real strong contributor. And then I think for Miami, it's OJ Frederic when he comes back into the lineup. He hasn't played in several games. Mario's been saying he's going to be healthy for them. Will Keontae Scott make it back in time for this game? So those are all sort of important injury updates to follow.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Ruben Owens obviously has been the workhorse with Moss out, and they've used a lot more Marcel Reed. Those two are the two leading rushers on the team. So expect to see a lot of Owens, a lot of Marcel Reed in the run game.
Now, what makes this Texas A&M team so much better than last year is the upgrades they made at the wide receiver position, and clearly Casey Concepcion, who was an All ACC wide receiver at NC State. His addition to this roster, as well as Mario Craver, who came over from Mississippi State, both of those guys have taken this offense to a different level. Carlos, I don't know how much you've had a chance to watch them play Texas A&M, their receivers, but certainly I have a couple times, and I got to tell you, I mean, this might be the best wide receiver group Miami's faced all season.
Probably, Concepcion was great at NC State. He's a dangerous slot guy. He's explosive, leads the team in touchdowns. I believe he leads the SEC in receiving touchdowns, if I'm not mistaken, or
Mm-hmm.
he's up there anyway. So he's a dangerous guy. I think most of the time when you're one of the things I used to do with him at NC State, and I think they do with him also at here at Texas A&M, is they like to use him in the slot and bring him on posts or cross and let him move with the football and try and beat the secondary that way. He's dangerous, but like you said, Craver's a really good receiver, and I think they complement each other well. The secondary for the Hurricanes, I don't think has been tested with multiple receivers of this level so far
Mm-hmm.
this season. They faced one guy in one game that's a really good receiver. Thinking back to Louisville.
Chris Bell, yeah.
Yeah, and then you face one guy usually on one of those teams that's really excellent, and it's
Deuce
difficult to defend.
Robinson with Florida State, and
Right.
right.
Never a couple guys like this at this caliber. So I think it's going to be an interesting. Uh, they're going to need OJ Frederic because it's going to be interesting on the back end.
For sure. And then the offensive line for A&M has done a good job. But they're another veteran group. I'm going to look at the career starts here for each of these guys on the offensive line. I got the full data sheet here in front of me. 49 starts for Trey Zune, their left tackle. 34 career starts for Chase Basantis, their left guard. 25 for their center, Mark Naboo. 37 for Armaj Reed Adams, the guy who came over from Kansas. And then Demetrius Crownover, the right tackle, 27 career starts. So, I mean, all of these guys have played a ton of football, and I guess that's why they're confident. I guess that's why they're talking shit about Ruben Payne.
They could talk shit all they want, but you know what? Mr. Naboo, just like his planet in Star Wars, is going to get wrecked by the Empire coming in. We're coming in with the stormtrooper uniforms, and we're going to wreck Naboo.
I love the comparison there, Carlos. All right. We have a mailbag that we definitely want to get to, and we're going to break down Miami, Texas A&M more as we get closer and closer to the game. But we had to bring the show back here to celebrate Miami getting into the college football playoff and having the opportunity to play some important games. Before we get to the mailbag, Carlos, just a quick thought from you on this. Do you feel like Miami has to win a game to sort of justify their place in the playoff? Like if they go into Texas A&M and lose a heartbreaker on a field goal, right? This is a good team. It's not like they're playing a bunch of scrubs.
Right.
They go in there and they lose a hard-fought game by a field goal. What would your feeling be about this season?
Listen, I think if they go in there and lose on a last-second field goal, if it's tight the whole way, if it's a battle, and they account for themselves well, I think that's something that they can be proud of. That's another step forward in the program. Made it to the playoff, finally took another step forward and accounted for themselves. If they get blown out, then that's embarrassing. Because obviously Notre Dame lost on a missed extra point against this team, second game of the season. And this is not what you want. Then Notre Dame's going to be up in arms and saying, we should have been in. If these guys couldn't even hang with Texas A&M, then we should have been the ones in there and gotten the rematch and gotten revenge for the earlier loss. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think Miami's going to come in their focus. They're going to want to prove something. And they should be able to win this game. It's going to be a battle. I don't think it's going to be, by any means a blowout by Miami. I think it's going to be back and forth. I think the fact that they're playing at 11 instead of at night in Kyle Field is going to help Miami. That energy at a night game is hits a little bit different at Kyle Field with the 12th man as opposed to a day game. The other thing is most of the kids are going to be hungover at 11 a.m. on a Saturday, right? So they're not going to be cheering too much. They're going to be throwing up in the bathroom, and hopefully by the end of the first half, they're throwing up just because of Texas A&M's performance.
All right. Maybe that's what happens. We will see. Let's get to the mailbag. This is Jay Salter, JRS Air 23 on Twitter, says after 20 years of horrible football, we get back to back 10-win seasons and a trip to the playoffs. This has been a fun ride the past 2 years. How far do you think we can go in the playoffs, Carlos? Realistically, how far do you think this team can go?
I think that Ohio State game is probably where it could end, just because Ohio State's defense is so good. Miami hasn't faced a defense like that all season. Ohio State's offense is good enough to put pressure on Miami's defense. They can score 17, 20 points, 24 points, and that'll be more than enough for them to win that game just because they can control Miami's offense. If you look at the landscape of the different teams in the playoff, especially those that are ranked in the top four and getting the buys, they have something that they do really, really well. That's on at an elite level, and then the other side of the ball complements them with at least good, not necessarily great, but good enough to win. And I think that's the way you see Ohio State. They're elite on defense. They're good on offense. They score a lot of points. They have some big time playmakers. Are they setting the world on fire in terms of their offense? They were good, but I don't think they were 500 yards a game, 50 points a game good. But they're good enough to get them through with that kind of a defense. And I think that's where it ends for Miami. I think Miami's defense is really good. I don't think they're elite. I think Miami's offense is good. I don't think they're elite by any means. And that's where you run into that roadblock in that next level.
I think Miami could win the national championship. I
Oh
do.
my
I
God, man.
think, and I
You are
think
now you set me up to make me look like the bad guy because I was being honest, and now you're gonna roll me under the bus. I appreciate that.
I'm not. I'm not. I'm not. You have the same take. You have the same take. But here's why I'm going to say I think Miami can win the national championship. You want to hear the argument? Here's the argument. The argument is I don't think there's a team out there like Georgia from a few years ago or Alabama from years ago. Even this Ohio State team from last year that won the national championship. They lost twice. So my point is, can Miami win the national championship? I think they can. Will they win the national championship is an entirely different
Right.
question. But I think on paper, the way that they are built on the offensive and defensive line, and I think you have a true playmaker in Malachi Tony that's an X factor that is tough for everybody. I mean, the way that Shannon Dawson throws him in motion, it's hard for them to double him, right? They uses him in a lot of different ways so that he doesn't get doubled. I think this is a team that can go on a run and win the national championship. I'm not throwing you under the bus. I'm not throwing anybody under the bus. What I'm saying is, can they? Yes. And I think the
Yes.
only reason is their offensive and defensive line play is elite, and the rest of college football does not look like. I don't sit there and look at the field and say, man, there's a juggernaut. There's nobody who's beating this team. I think Georgia, the way that they played in the SEC championship game, makes you feel like maybe Georgia's about to take off and go on a run and get a whole lot better. And they have. Their defensive line, their young players on defense have all improved week to week to week here as the season has gone on. Don't feel like there's a juggernaut right now. I'm like, yeah, chance.
And to me, I think I'm less scared of Georgia than I am Ohio State. You froze up there. We're hitting the freeze point here at
It's
47
okay.
minutes.
It's
There we go.
okay.
You're back. So 48 minutes. Okay. So to me, I think I'm much less scared of Georgia than I am Ohio State. The problem is if you beat Ohio State and make it to that next round, then what do you have left in the tank? How many guys are still healthy? It's a grind to be in this
Mm-hmm.
tournament, and especially when you're facing this caliber of team week to week to week. You're having to beat a really good SEC team on the road. You're having to beat Ohio State in the next round. Then you're having to play against Georgia. All these are physical games, and it's difficult. This is a very difficult road to get in. That's why the teams with the
Right.
buys have the advantage, although they didn't win last year. But that helps a ton because you're resting your players and you're getting your bodies ready and preparing for that next round. So at some point, it all becomes, where are we in terms of a team? Are we whole? Are we ready? Can we continue to push forward? And it's a lot to ask to run through this gauntlet and come out victorious. I think they have the talent, obviously, to play with anyone. They've recruited well to do that. They've set up the team to do that. When I was saying about the elite stuff, I don't think Miami's offense is elite. They
Right.
don't have the elite playmakers to match up with some of these defenses that they're going to have to, particularly Ohio State and Georgia, to dominate them. So, and
Yeah.
their defense is good, but it's not elite. It's really good, but it's not elite.
If
And
Miami
that's
had if Miami had a really good tight end, I would probably feel more confident saying Miami will win the national championship. But I just feel like so much of the offense is predicated on Malachi Tony that I think you're right. It's going to be hard to win 3 games in a row. And let's not forget, Malachi Tony is not big. These teams are
Right.
going to go looking to hit him hard. But can they? Can Miami, if a fortune falls their way and there's no injuries? Yeah, I think talent wise, they can pull it off. I think they can beat every single team. The problem is winning 4 of those games.
Absolutely, and I think schematically also, if you look at the teams that they're playing in this tournament, are the ones that are the best in this tournament
Yeah,
offensively, they have a really good system, and they put defenses in stressful positions. And I don't think we do that, as you know, as an offense. I think the last 4 games, Shannon Dawson's done a really good job
right.
uh, changing things up. But does he continue in it? Can he coach against these guys and outmatch these SEC programs and Big Ten programs in the tournament? I don't know.
All right. This is from Scary Rhombus. Which Mario are we going to get in the playoffs? Ultra conservative Mario that goes into a shell as soon as he gets a lead, or the Mario from the last 4 games?
If they go on a shell, they're going to get their ass kicked.
Yeah, I think you have to let it all hang out, and hopefully Mario realizes that if you're going to win, but we won't know until December 20th at 11 a.m. Central Time. We
Right, and
really will
what are
not
you
know.
saving it for? Also, what are you saving it for? There is no bowl game
Yeah,
after this, right? This is it.
yeah,
This is your last shot. You begged, you campaigned on TV to get into this playoff. They let you in, and what are you if you're going to go into a shell and just start going 3 clouds in a yard of dust, three yards in a cloud of dust, and that's the way you're going to respond to being led into the tournament instead of
yeah.
just letting it all hang out, letting it all fly, playing like it's the last game you're ever going to play. Then to me, that's a mistake.
All right. This is from Better Win 2.0. Playoff question: biggest disadvantage or biggest advantage you see against A&M? Biggest question you have against A&M, and thoughts on drawing OSU in round 2, assuming they beat A&M. All right. Let's just go with the biggest advantage we see against A&M. What advantage do you see right now, early?
I think they could run the ball on it. I think they really can. I think they could also get pressure on Marcel Reed with the front four. I think those are the two advantages. To me, the question is, can the receivers get open against that secondary? Not necessarily Malachi Tony, but to me, the outside receivers and the tight ends. If
Right.
all you have is Malachi Tony, that's not going to be enough to get a W against them because they're going to be able. They would rather Malachi Tony catch the ball underneath and try and drive you all the way down the field. And have him be the only source of offense and be able to lock down those guys on the outside and the tight ends and have you just be one dimensional in that sense. If they could, and also if they could shut down your run game, then you're pretty much cooked because what they're going to do is just lock you up outside, bring guys in the box, let Malachi Tony get his catches, but nobody else is going to touch the ball.
Corey Lowe on Twitter says, "Hey guys, so do you think with the changes on offense, meaning we're more creative than we were early in the season, do you think we have a chance to go deep in the playoffs?"
I think if it continues, yes, and I think if they evolve it, yes. It just can't be
The same
uh,
stuff.
the same stuff, and it can't be like I said before, grab bag, right? In the
Hmm.
previous weeks, what I mean by that is you have to come into the game with a certain expectation. Okay, this is what we're going to run, but also have an idea of what the counter should be. You should have an
Right.
anticipation of how the defense is going to adjust to what you're running, and then what you could counter with immediately or later in the game. Offensive coordination is not just about calling plays; it's about setting up other plays later in the game. Right. So there's sometimes you run things that only get you a yard or 2 yards, but you get a look that you say, okay, next time I know what I'm coming with because I'm going to give you the same look in terms of formation and you're going to react this way, but then I can hit you with something else on the other side. So that's what you need to do. It needs to be strategic, planned, and sort of forward thinking, not just reactionary.
All right. This is from Tom524, and then a whole bunch of numbers. How did we get in? We all know this had nothing to do with on-field play. This is all behind the scenes stuff. Did we get in because even though the ACC is the redheaded stepchild of ABC ESPN, at the end of the day, we're still an ESPN property and Notre Dame isn't? Or, this is a long take here, did Jim Phillips cash in some favors or promise future favors to Greg Sankey? Really curious about the backroom agreements that were made to make this happen. Don't get me wrong. I believe the right decision was made. Love to hear the story behind it. Tom, I don't have a story for you right now. I just have my own wild speculation. My wild speculation is that Duke winning and forcing essentially James Madison into that last spot for the group of five champion or the fifth conference champion forced a lot of the people in that selection room to say, sorry, we got to pick between Miami and Notre Dame. And I think ultimately that was the final push that got Miami. And I think if Virginia wins, I think Notre Dame is probably in the playoff. and they move Alabama back to 10. To be honest with you, that's what I think probably would happen. So I
Right.
think that's my speculation. That's nothing on reporting or talking to anybody and hearing something. I'll probably hear something in the summertime or the springtime,
It makes sense.
but I just think right now that's
But
the
here's the more
impetus.
important point. Number one, who gives a shit? We're in. And not just because we're in, but also because whatever logic they're going to use is going to be flawed regardless. Because
Yes.
their logic has been flawed from the beginning. So who cares what logic they spin or use to be able to say, okay, Miami got in because of this reason? Because it's going to be bullshit anyway. It's going to be a
Yep.
stupid reason. It's going to be illogical. So let's forget about that, right? And number two, we prayed to 7 pound 8 ounce baby Jesus, and that's what got us in.
All right. This is from Coach Travieso Magic Buck on Twitter. With the Hurricanes finally making the playoffs, will the Miami-Dade Correctional Department temporarily release Raul to attend the game?
I don't know if they're going to allow him in Texas. To be quite honest, I don't know if College Station, Texas, is the right place for Raul. Um, but we'll see. Maybe he gets on the loose. Maybe he sends a message of goodwill and hype to the Hurricanes before the game.
All right. This is Spectrum News, Asher Wildman, our friend. For the first time, Manny, I'm glad you were wrong on versus Notre Dame being in. The college football committee is nothing but contradictions. Eye test only applies for and not Bama. Conference champion cannot hurt Bama, but crushes BYU. Coaches leave and Ole Miss rises. Do we need computers to find the best 12? Go Canes. I guess he just wanted to get a lot off his chest there in terms of the theory. Look, Asher, again, I told you guys early on when all this stuff was coming together. I told you this last year. This is the SEC Big Ten Invitational. This is about getting teams from those conferences to play in meaningful games and for everybody to tune in and watch those conferences throughout the season. The ACC is the stepchild. They are the stepchild. That is correct. They are the second tier programming of ESPN. But luckily for Miami, they are the stepchild of ESPN, and that helped them get into this tournament. I think, my own opinion.
Yeah.
Stephen Thunder, 56 blacks again. Can the Canes get an MOU like Notre Dame that guarantees them a spot in the playoffs too? No, they can't.
No.
Notre Dame is the golden child who just got screwed, and you better believe that there will be makeup calls for Notre Dame next year.
Yes, and I don't know if this would push them a little closer to joining a conference or joining the ACC.
I
Um,
speculated that in my column today, by the way.
yeah. I'm sorry, I haven't read it. I've been busy. Sorry, sir.
It's
I will
okay.
read it later. As soon as I'm going to go to the bathroom after this, and I will finish that article. I'll start it immediately.
Make sure you do your best thinking in there. After
I
all,
do. I do my best reading in there. That's why it takes so long. Anyway, um, yeah, it's difficult to say, but I think maybe this finally pushes Notre Dame a little closer to joining the ACC. To me, I think
I think the
would
Big Ten, by the way, not the ACC.
I think they would go ACC if they're able to seal the deal by adding, let's say, Army and Navy, because that would keep protected rivalries for Notre Dame without them having to use non-conference slots for those games, and still allows them to play in non-conference USC and Michigan. But I think ultimately what Notre Dame has to do is, if they join the ACC, is force the hand of the committee and say, regardless of ranking, ACC champ is guaranteed a playoff spot. That way, it evens the field and it makes it worthwhile for Notre Dame to be able to go out there and play games against USC, Michigan, and non-conference, then win the conference if they, make it to the conference championship game in the ACC and still get a playoff spot.
Well, I think Notre Dame's athletic director, and I haven't read the story myself yet, but I saw something about it on social media that essentially Notre Dame's athletic director said the ACC has done permanent damage to the relationship with the college football playoffs snub. So you can read some of those articles that are out there now. They're saying it did permanent damage. I think what's going to happen is the ACC has been at 17 teams now for 2 years. The obvious leaving a space open for Notre Dame when they decide to get in. I think this is what's going to happen. I think the Big Ten's going to tell Rutgers, see you later. Go join your brothers in the ACC, right? The Syracuses and the Boston colleges, and we'll take Notre Dame, and that's what's going to end up happening here. That's just my opinion of future forecasting.
Yeah, hey, you know what's it's so funny that Notre Dame is talking like that about the ACC when they've been playing ACC teams for the last few years on a regular basis. So it's kind of like they've been messing with someone on the side and they caught herpes, and now they're
They're
complaining
upset
about it.
about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe you should have protected yourself.
All right, Armando Izagiri. I know we pick at Mario's weaknesses, and rightfully so. But can you speak on how big of a deal it is that Mario left a better job and setup at the time Oregon was for the last 20 years to help rebuild Miami? How should fans view him in light of that? Well, look, the bottom line is Mario did leave a good job at Oregon, a very cushy situation. And who knows where the Ducks would be right now had Mario stayed. I know a lot of people feel like they're better off without Mario. A lot of the Oregon fans have been very vocal about that they're happy with Dan Lanning. But last I checked, Dan Lanning has as many national championships as Mario does as a coach. They both have not won the national championship. And so while Dan Lanning has certainly had some good success and made it to the number one seed in the college football playoff, he got run off the field last year by Ohio State. And so this playoff run is going to be very, very interesting. We will see whether or not Oregon is really better off in the long run without Mario. But I know this: Miami hasn't won 10 games in back to back seasons in a long time, and they finally did it because of this coach. So we can sit here and point out all of his flaws. He has made the Miami football program better, and his hire has been fully justified because he's gotten Miami into the playoffs.
Yes, and I will say this: I think it speaks more to his character than it does his coaching ability, because it takes someone that has a lot of conviction in terms of what they believe and what they love to take a situation that was clearly on the downswing, that was not what it was in the past, where many have struggled over the last 20 years to try and rebuild, and leave where he was, that was very successful, something that he built over a few years, and not just continued what a program was doing, but actually elevated it after Willie Taggart, and made that a better program, and came down here and decided to rebuild this thing because he loved it. He loved the university. He loved the program. He loves the city, and decided to take on this burden. And he knew it was going to be hard fought battle. He didn't know how hard it was going to be initially. He was, I think, shocked at how difficult it was going to be when he first came on board. But he fought the good fight. He's been down here. He hasn't entertained any jobs. He could have easily, after that 5-7 season, said, "Shit, I made a mistake. I got to quit this and run off." Or he could have been frustrated after that second season and said, "Okay, I might listen to offers." Even after last season, you're saying, "Damn, I had Cam Ward, I still couldn't get in the playoffs. Maybe I should be looking at other opportunities." But he didn't. He's stuck with it. He's fought. He's gotten this team to back-to-back 10-win seasons, gotten them in the playoffs now, and the program continues to progress, especially when it comes to talent acquisition, not only in recruiting but in the portal.
Now, I will say this, Carlos. He's got him into the playoff in year 4. Knowing the hiring situation and everything that played out with getting rid of Manny Diaz and getting Mario to come here. Manny Diaz won the ACC championship before Mario did. Mario, luckily, was able to get Miami into the playoff the same year, despite, you know, an unfortunate tiebreaker system in the ACC. But I will say this: I think Mario has to continue this. This can't be just, hey, they got to the playoff this year, and then
Yeah,
next year they don't make the playoff or they don't win the ACC. I think the standard is that going forward. I think they've recruited to that level. I think the expectation is set to that level. And so is Mario a complete and total success? No, because Miami hasn't won a national championship yet, and Miami hasn't even won the ACC yet. Okay. So he's still got to accomplish those things in my mind for everybody to feel like this was a home run hire, or this was the right hire.
absolutely. But I think
It's
we're
the
talking
it's
about
the right hire for right now, is what it
exactly.
is.
But I think we're looking at this as if we're reading a book and we've only gotten halfway through it, and we're trying to make a determination as
Right,
to what's
right.
a good
We're
book or
not.
not. I think he's got plenty of runway left, and I think winning or getting into the playoff now has given him a little bit more runway. I think what you want to see
Mhm.
is constant progress from the program, and I think you've seen that year to year to year to year over the last 4 years, and I think that'll continue. And I think if you ask Mario himself, the standard is the playoffs now from now on, and ultimately the national championship. But I think they definitely, like we talked about the last week, is they have to focus on winning the ACC. I think that needs to be the core focus moving forward, because if they win that conference, they're going to be ranked in the top 15. They're going to the playoff. So ultimately,
Right.
win your conference, focus on doing the best you can within your conference play, and that'll get you into the playoff regardless.
Steven Thunder, 56 Blacks again with another question for us. Due to all the whining from SEC teams and Notre Dame, do you think we'll get a top 16 or top 25 playoff going forward with an NIT of some sort for G5 schools? All right, Steven, great question. Number one, the G6, G5 schools, and it will be a G6 because you're going to have the Pac 12 essentially become another G6, group of six conference here with some teams moving into the Pac 12. Um, they want the money, right? James Madison and Tulane just finished cashing in. They got $4 million each for making the college football playoff. Those conferences get to split some of that money as well. Um, so the point is here that as long as the big TV money is there, those conferences are going to fight to be a part of this because there is no money or big money anyway in a G6 tournament. Do I think there should be a G6 tournament? Do I think there should be separation? Absolutely. And I think after we get through the first round games where Tulane and James Madison get absolutely curb stomped, people are going to say, hey, something needs to change, right? We're changing college football. We're evolving. We're tinkering year to year to year. I think something will eventually happen, and maybe there's a TV network out there that says, "Hey, we want to be the group of six TV network, right? We want to be the ones to run an entirely different tournament." Because I think that's the way things are headed. I think Notre Dame pulling out of the bowl games, and by the way, Notre Dame's not the only one. There were a bunch of other teams, Carlos. There was a 5-7 Baylor team. There's I think Kansas State. There are a bunch of teams that have pulled out of the bowls because essentially they're meaningless. Nobody wants to watch them. Nobody gives a shit about it. So how do you restructure the bowls to make it interesting? I think an NIT tournament, I think a G6 tournament would all be ways for them to create more revenue. Now, how do you get everybody to agree? That's the impossible question, right? That's the difficult part here with college football is that everybody has their own angles and how they want things to be run. I think to me, I think there still will be a spot, some way, shape, or form, for a G6 school to get into the college football playoff. But I fully expect there to be all kinds of changes in the offseason in terms of the format and what happens going forward. Will there be a top 16? Will there be a top 24? I don't know. I know that decision will be made here in January, but something has to change because um, there's too many people that are unhappy with the system.
I
And
agree.
if you're not making a ton of money, you're pissed.
Right. And if it ain't about dollars, it don't make sense. So I would say I agree with the NIT thing. I floated that a couple weeks ago. I have it as one of my pinned tweets. Um, the way I think I would structure it, like I said, is I would have the top 16 with 15, 16, 17, and 18 playing for a playing game, essentially, like they do in
Hmm.
college basketball. Then that being the 16th team. Then what you take is the remaining group of five or group of six champions. Let's say four remaining champions in the group of six conference champions. They make the NIT, and then you take four of the next ranked teams from 19 down to play in that tournament with the group of six. That would be a great NIT tournament. And I think that'd be valuable for TV. Um, the other thing is you have to also create a system where you're doing these rankings that make sense. And I don't think a committee by itself is not the way to go. I think what you need to do is have former coaches, like we
Yep,
talked
and
about last week,
players, and
and
players.
players make it rank these teams themselves, and then also use a computer system that takes into account strength of schedule, strength of rank, opponents, and now you have AI which could really dig deep in terms of the numbers and factor in all kinds of situations that normally you couldn't factor into a computer poll before, and make a better sort of systematic analytic ranking of these teams that combines that with the committee's or the players and coaches rankings.
Back to the BCS, says Carlos. Give me the analytics.
Right. Well, listen, it's going to be better than BCS because now with AI, you could do a lot more and dig a lot
That
deeper.
that's true. That's true. All right, Taco Thunder 5 stop Cop City says over the moon we've qualified and that head to head still matters in sports. I am too. I think that's important. Miami's path could be the toughest of any in the field, playing arguably only 6 to 7 teams from here. Should we just enjoy the ride as fans for making it, or can this team match up and win for weeks in a row? Yeah, I think either way you should enjoy the ride. Enjoy the
Yeah, just
fact that
enjoy the
you're a
ride.
part of what Miami was meant to be a part of. I mean, let's face it, this is one of the hottest spots, if not the hottest spot in the world for football talent every single year, right? Miami, South Florida, Fort Lauderdale, uh, Texas area, California, right? To not have schools representing those players every single year in the college football playoff on the world's biggest stage is sad. And it's good that Mario Cristobal has been able to rebuild this program and put it in contention for a championship. That is what you should enjoy. It's been a long time since Miami's been relevant. They are nationally relevant again. We can say Miami is nationally
Yep.
relevant again, right?
And
They're in the picture.
the last time I remember them being on a national stage like this in a postseason in a bowl game was versus LSU when they got drubbed 40-9. I think it was. that was the last time they made a real big bowl game or had a real big profile in the postseason, and everybody was like, "Oh my
Hmm.
God, Miami LSU, what a great matchup!" That was the last time, and we're talking what 2004 Peach Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to gloss over 2017 when they lost to Wisconsin in the Orange Bowl, but I think you're right in terms of actually having an impact, like actually being in the race, right? We're
Right.
sitting here saying, can Miami go on a run, right?
Yeah.
Do we think it's going to happen? Probably not. They've got a really tough road to get there. They got to win 4 really tough games to win a national championship. But
And
can
I
they
think the
beat?
feeling this year is different than that year in 17 because they finished with a whimper, losing 3 in a row, losing
Right.
to Pitt, then losing the conference championship, and then losing to Wisconsin.
They won in
And
November, Carlos. They did.
yep,
That
they
that in
won in November.
itself. They won in November.
On the road in the cold against Pitt, they won 4 games in a row to be able to
Right.
put themselves in this position in dominating fashion, which allowed them to be here. So the feeling about this program is different going into the postseason than that 2017 team. And that 2017 team, it felt like they were imploding on the way down.
Yeah. No doubt. And we knew they got four. They caught some breaks on turnovers, and that was basically the turnover chain. That's what created
Yeah,
all that magic. This is much more legitimate. This is on the offensive and defensive lines. This is with a legitimate quarterback. This is with legitimate receivers, and
right.
it's real.
It's not fluky.
No, this is from Javier B. J Boy 1724, longtime friend of our show. On a scale from 1 to 10, how shocked are you that we are in? The CFP is really about matchups, in my opinion. With that said, what matchups are most favorable for Miami in this CFP, and what odds do you give Miami of getting to the Final Four and championship game? All right, J Boy, how shocked am I that Miami got in? I'll say an 8. I think I was thinking there was a chance it would happen, but I was sensing that they were going to get screwed.
Yeah, I agree.
Um, and then as far as the matchups, look, I think the first one is favorable. I think the second one is difficult. I think the third one would be difficult if you have to play Georgia. Like Ohio State, Georgia, to me, I wouldn't go in confident that Miami would beat either of those teams.
Yeah,
Now, is it possible? It's possible. It's not impossible. I don't sit here and say, "Man, Ohio State and Georgia are just this is those teams that I remember watching from a couple years ago." They're not. They're not. I just think they have their flaws. But can Miami win, get to the Final Four? What kind of odds? I am with you, Carlos. I think the more realistic expectation is they get to the Final Eight
yeah,
and then run into trouble because of health or whatever. I mean, this again, you got to remember these guys are going to war with really good teams. The physical battle, that's going to count for something
yeah.
here.
Yeah, and the level of physicality is at a different level than what they've experienced in the regular season. It's at a heightened level now, especially with a lot more on the line. And these teams are playing against our elite teams. I
Hmm.
think that first round matchup they drew a very favorable first round matchup. I think
Yep.
they match up well against Texas A&M. I think this is to me it's better than having to face Ole Miss even without Lane Kiffin. I think this was the right matchup for them. They could take advantage of.
All right. Carlos, I appreciate you jumping on with me once again. We will have more show for you as we get closer to the kickoff of Miami and Texas A&M in the first round of the college football playoff. But we hope you guys are happy. I think the both of us are to see that Miami has taken a step forward for the program and the sake of the city. And hopefully, this is just the beginning.
Amen. And smoke them if you got them. Let's get ready to go in there and start tearing up asses. Belt to ass, as the kids say.
All right. For Carlos Ledo, I'm Manny Navarro of The Athletic. We will see you guys soon.
Peace.